Your wife disrespected me. Face the consequences.
You confronted her. You answer to me.
She slammed the violation notice against my chest before I even stepped fully onto my own porch. Your wife crossed the property marker, Claudia Merriweather snapped, her voice sharp enough to slice the air. The board chair stood there in her blazing red blazer, a color she treated like a badge of authority. Eyes narrowed, breathing quick, already spoiling for a fight. And my wife, Lena, stood behind her, visibly shaken, clutching her arm as if protecting herself from something more than words. "You think I won't enforce this?" The enforcer in crimson barked, stepping closer, too close. An insult to the HOA is an insult to the rules. I didn't flinch. "Careful," I told her, voice low. "You're standing on a boundary you can't control." She blinked, just once, caught off guard. That was the stop scroll moment. Her expression froze, confusion threading through her confidence as if I'd spoken a language she didn't recognize. This is where I'd normally ask you something important. Hit subscribe and tell, where are you watching from? But trust me, you're going to want to stay locked in. I straightened fully, meeting her stare. "You forgot who placed that stone marker," I said quietly. "It was engineered by a man who laid foundations that still hold half this county upright. I rebuilt bridges with him. I inspect structural failures for a living. I can tell you exactly why your claim, just like your threat, has no structural integrity." Her jaw twitched. The clipboard queen hated being challenged, especially by someone who wouldn't tremble under her theatrics. But this wasn't about the marker. Not really. And it wasn't about the bogus fine she'd taped to our door. It was personal, twisted, fragile pride wrapped in HOA authority. Lena tightened her grip on her arm. Her voice trembled. "I didn't disrespect her. I told her the marker was staying. That's all." I felt something inside me pull tight. That marker wasn't decoration. It was carved by Lena's late father. It was the last gift he made with his own hands before he passed, engraved with her initials and set exactly where he instructed. That stone meant home. It meant memory. It meant she still carried a piece of him. And that's what Claudia wanted gone. Not a boundary stone, a piece of Lena's heart. The tyrant in heels stepped even closer, shadows catching the hard edge of her cheekbones. "Your wife looked at me with disrespect," she hissed, "and disrespect has consequences." The officer of rules had always been dramatic, but something in her tone today was different, colder, edged with something reckless. I noticed the tension in her shoulders, the way she gripped her inspection clipboard as if it were a weapon instead of paper. "Back off. Claudia," I warned. "This is harassment, and you know it." "Oh, I know exactly what this is." Her smile thinned. "It's defiance." Lena winced again, her hand lifting to her shoulder. I noticed it. The tiny tear in her sleeve, the redness creeping along her skin. Her breath hitched. Something had already happened before I opened the door. "What did she do to you?" I asked softly. Lena hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. Claudia stepped between us, blocking my view as if claiming territory. "Your wife needs to learn her place," she said. My pulse ignited. "Move." She didn't. That was the moment everything shifted, the air thick, the tension alive, the porch suddenly too narrow for 3 people, and a brewing storm. This wasn't a simple violation. This wasn't HOA posturing. This was the beginning of something unthinkable. And as the enforcer in crimson raised her chin, reveling in the control she believed she held, I felt a cold realization settle in my bones. She wasn't done with us. Not by a long shot. If you've ever stood on the edge of a moment you knew would change everything, you already understand the gravity of what comes next. Because the next few minutes would fracture our lives in ways I wasn't prepared for, and reveal just how far Claudia Merriweather was willing to go. She didn't move, not when I stepped forward, not when Lena tried to retreat, not even when a group of neighbors slowed their evening walk just to watch the unfolding tension on our porch. Claudia Merriweather seemed to draw power from the attention, lifting her chin as if the entire neighborhood should applaud her enforcement rituals. The board chair pointed at the stone marker again, that ridiculous clipboard tucked tight under her arm like a general's command tablet. "You'll remove it by tomorrow," she announced loudly, ensuring the audience heard every syllable. "If your wife's already forgotten what defiance costs, I'll be happy to remind her." Lena's breath hitched, and she took another subtle step back. I caught the movement, and something inside me roared. "Enough," I said, my voice cutting through the air. "You're crossing a line." The clipboard queen's lips curved. I cross lines when homeowners refuse to respect them. Her control obsession was no secret, but seeing this cruelty directed at Lena, already shaking, already hurt, sent a cold burn up my spine. The enforcer in crimson finally shifted her stance, heel turning, body angled toward the walkway where two neighbors hovered uncertainly. "Go on," she told them. "Take a good look. This is what happens when someone thinks they can insult the board. Not the HOA, not the rules, the board, meaning her. This wasn't governance, it was ego." Lena leaned into my side, whispering, "Ethan, we need to go inside." Her voice was thin, brittle, the kind of tone someone used when trying not to cry in front of a bully. I slid my arm around her protectively and led her toward the door, but Claudia wasn't done performing her twisted theater. "Leave the marker untouched," the officer of rules snapped, "and tomorrow's inspection will be far more invasive. I'll make sure every corner of your property is reviewed for non-compliance." The tyrant in heels didn't care who heard. She wanted the power more than the outcome. When we stepped inside, I closed the door, but the moment it clicked shut, Lena exhaled sharply and clutched her shoulder again. "She grabbed me," she whispered. "Hard." My jaw clenched. "Show me." She hesitated but slowly lifted her sleeve. A deep red imprint, swollen and spreading, marked her upper arm. No broken skin, but the pressure behind it was unmistakable, forceful, angry, punitive. I swallowed hard. "She put her hands on you." "She was furious," Lena said. "She said I disrespected her authority because I told her the marker wasn't movable. She shoved the clipboard into my arm and said my tone was unacceptable. Every word snapped tighter around my lungs. "She hurt you over a sentence," I murmured. "No," Lena whispered. "She hurt me over pride." Outside, the enforcer in crimson continued pacing the sidewalk like a predator marking territory. Through the slats of the blinds, I watched her glare at our house, waiting, calculating, feeding the flames of her own delusion. This wasn't a simple violation dispute. This was a woman spiraling. I helped Lena onto the couch and grabbed an ice pack. She held it gently against her shoulder, wincing but staying quiet. That silence, soft, pained, held together by sheer will, hit me harder than any explosion of tears would have. "She kept saying my tone was disrespectful," Lena whispered, "like I had no right to defend the marker." "She wants control," I replied. "She wants obedience. And she thinks hurting me will get it." Her voice broke. I sat beside her, letting the weight of that truth settle between us like a heavy stone. The clipboard queen wasn't finished, not by any measure. Her ego wouldn't allow Lena's resistance to stand unpunished. Through the window, I saw movement again. Claudia marched up the path and snapped a photo of the stone marker, angles, distances, measurements, as if gathering evidence for a battle only she believed she'd win. "She's obsessed," I muttered. "This isn't enforcement, it's fixation." "Ethan," Lena whispered, her hand trembling. "I'm scared she'll come back." I placed my hand over hers. "She won't touch you again." But even as I said it, the officer of rules straightened her spine, pivoted sharply, and pointed at our porch as if vowing war. "She's not letting this go," Lena said. "No," I answered quietly. "And that means we can't either." A sudden knock echoed across the door, slow, deliberate, unmistakable. Lena flinched. My heartbeat hardened into something cold and absolute. She was back. And whatever she wanted next wasn't going to be a conversation. The knock didn't stop. It came again, slow, heavy, deliberate. Claudia Merriweather wasn't knocking to talk. She was knocking to remind us she believed she owned the threshold of every home in Rosewood Bluffs. I stepped toward the door, but before I reached it, Lena winced and whispered, "Ethan, don't let her in." I nodded once. "I won't." I opened the door, but only a fraction. The enforcer in crimson stood on our porch, chin lifted, a faint smile pressed onto her lips like she'd already won something I didn't know I was competing for. The porch light cast a harsh glow across her blazer, making the red fabric look darker, almost bruised. "We're not finished," she said. "You hurt my wife," I answered. "We were finished the moment you crossed that line." The clipboard queen scoffed. Your wife escalated. I defended the rules. You put your hands on her. Her smile thinned. She insulted my authority. Before I could respond, a soft crunch sounded behind her. Olivia Trent stood at the edge of our walkway, arms wrapped around herself, posture stiff, eyes shifting between us. The conflicted treasurer looked like she'd been dragged there by guilt rather than choice. The tyrant in heels turned sharply, annoyance flaring. Olivia, this isn't your concern. Olivia flinched, not visibly, but in the tiny telling tremor of her hands. She stepped forward anyway. I heard yelling, she whispered. I wanted to make sure Lena was okay. Claudia's eyes flashed. She's fine. Let her speak, I said. Olivia's gaze darted to Lena, who sat visible through the door gap, clutching the ice pack against her shoulder. The moment she saw the swelling, her breath caught, and her expression shattered into something raw, fear, guilt, realization all blending behind her eyes. Claudia moved closer to her like a shadow swallowing light. Don't get involved. I already am, Olivia murmured, voice cracking at the edges. The officer of rules took a slow step toward her. Remember your place. Olivia's entire body recoiled, subtle but unmistakable, her fingers twisted together. She cast a quick glance at me before looking back at her shoes, unable to withstand Claudia's stare. I saw it then, the internal battle tearing her apart. The conflict lived in every shallow breath she took, every nervous shift of her weight. She wanted to do the right thing. But she'd been under Claudia's thumb for too long, conditioned to think compliance was safety. Olivia, I said gently, you saw what happened, didn't you? She didn't answer. Claudia did. She saw nothing. Olivia's lips parted, then pressed shut. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with the kind of panic a trapped animal feels when the exit is inches away, but guarded by a predator. The clipboard queen leaned in. Go home. I can speak for myself, Olivia whispered almost too quietly. Not tonight, you can't. I stepped forward, blocking Claudia's advance. If you threaten her, threaten? Claudia barked a sharp laugh. I'm correcting insubordination. Lena's weak voice drifted from behind me. She grabbed me. Olivia. She shoved me hard. Olivia's breath broke audibly. She squeezed her eyes shut, shoulders curling inward like she was bracing for impact. Not from me, not from Lena, but from the board chair towering inches from her. Olivia, I said softly, you don't have to protect her anymore. Claudia stepped between us, glare cutting through the porch light. I run this community. You don't get to chip away at my board through my treasurer. That's not your treasurer, I replied. That's a woman scared of you. Olivia's eyes snapped up, shining with a truth she didn't dare say aloud. Her fingers trembled harder. Her breathing quickened. The internal war had reached its breaking point, but fear still held her prisoner. I should go, she whispered, stepping back. Claudia's lips twitched in victory, but Olivia didn't walk away fast. She lingered, hesitating, just long enough for me to see it, the flicker of something brave trying to surface. She turned one last time, voice barely a breath. Ethan, I'm sorry. Then she disappeared down the walkway, shoulders hunched, moving like someone fleeing a place where danger breathed behind them. Claudia pivoted back to me, cold satisfaction radiating from her. See? Nobody stands against me. You injured my wife, I said, steady and sure. Someone will. She leaned in, whispering with venomous confidence, not in this neighborhood. I shut the door slowly, eyes locked on hers the entire time. Because I wasn't done either, not anymore. The next morning, the neighborhood felt different, tight, watchful, brittle. Word traveled fast in Rosewood Bluffs, and Claudia Merriweather always made sure it traveled in her direction. By sunrise, 3 neighbors had already walked past our driveway slower than usual, pretending to check sprinklers or retrieve non-existent newspapers. Everyone wanted to know what happened. No one wanted to ask. Inside, Lena sat at the kitchen table, her shoulder wrapped, her eyes rimmed red from a night of broken sleep. Every time the house creaked or a car door shut outside, she flinched. That alone was enough to ignite something fierce in my chest. You don't have to be scared in your own home, I told her quietly. I'm not scared of the house, she whispered. I'm scared of her. Before I could respond, a shrill tone cut through the air, an email alert on my phone. I glanced down. HOA notice. Mandatory property inspection. Immediate compliance required. My jaw tightened. The enforcer in crimson was escalating. I opened the message and felt heat climb up my spine. The clipboard queen had filed a formal behavioral violation against Lena, claiming she had initiated physical hostility during yesterday's encounter. Claudia demanded a full inspection of our exterior property barriers within 12 hours. Lena's voice cracked. She's trying to cover what she did. She's trying to bury you in paperwork before we expose her, I corrected. But the officer of rules wasn't just filing reports. She was building a paper fortress around herself, one manufactured accusation at a time. I stepped out to the porch for air and stopped dead. Claudia was standing across the street, still, silent, watching our front door like a hawk circling a wounded animal. The tyrant in heels wasn't alone. 2 HOA volunteers flanked her, each holding clipboards as if preparing for battle. Behind them, a maintenance cart waited with measuring tools, a distance wheel, and a camera. She was staging a public display, a spectacle, a warning. The board chair lifted her chin when she saw me. "Inspection begins in 20 minutes, she called out, making sure the entire neighborhood heard. Refusal will count as obstruction. "You're weaponizing procedure," I replied. She smiled. "I'm applying standards." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have words, but because Olivia Trent appeared at the far end of the sidewalk, hands clasped anxiously in front of her. Her eyes flicked between us, conflict etched deeper than yesterday. She moved closer, hesitant, like she was stepping into a storm she wasn't sure she'd survive. Claudia saw her and stiffened. "Treasurer Trent," she said sharply, "this is board business." Olivia swallowed. I know, I just wanted to observe." The clipboard queen's eyes narrowed. Observing implies doubt. Olivia's breath hitched. "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." I watched Olivia shrink in real time, shoulders folding inward, gaze dropping, hands twisting. Her internal struggle wasn't subtle anymore. It radiated off her like heat. When she stepped near my driveway, I asked gently, "Did you come here because you know what she's doing is wrong?" Olivia froze, caught between truth and fear. Her lips parted, but before a word escaped, Claudia swooped in. "She came because she understands order," the officer of rules snapped, "and because the board stands united." Olivia didn't nod. She didn't deny it either. She simply stood there, battling herself, trembling so subtly only someone paying attention would notice. Claudia snapped her fingers at the volunteers. "Prepare the equipment." They obeyed immediately, unloading measuring tapes and snapping photos of the lawn edging. She orchestrated the scene like a conductor manipulating instruments, sharp gestures, clipped commands, a performance for the neighborhood. Audience now gathering in hushed interest. I stepped closer. "This inspection is retaliatory." The tyrant in heels didn't even blink. "Everything I do is authorized, not assault." A crack appeared in her expression. Tiny, quick, but real. She recovered fast. "Your wife initiated contact." Lena stepped into the doorway behind me, voice trembling but determined. "You grabbed me." Claudia's jaw flexed. "You raised your voice." Olivia flinched again, her guilt painted across her face like a silent confession she couldn't speak aloud. She backed away, almost tripping over the curb, her breathing shallow. Claudia turned to the volunteers. "Begin the documentation." I exhaled slowly. "You're cornering yourself with every move." She smiled, a sharp, brittle thing. "No, Mr. Ward, I'm cornering you." Neighbors watched from driveways and porches, unsure whether to stay or flee. The energy in the street thickened until it felt suffocating. Lena whispered behind me, "She's unraveling." "She's escalating," I corrected. And escalation means she's afraid. Because only desperate people create chaos this loud. And Claudia Merriweather was screaming through every action. The so-called inspection hadn't ended. It had only mutated overnight. By noon the next day, my inbox was flooded with new notices written in the unmistakable tone of Claudia Merriweather, cold, clipped, and dripping with authority she believed was unshakable. But she'd miscalculated. Escalation always reveals the cracks. You just have to know where to look. And I did. I'd spent 10 years as a forensic safety investigator, analyzing industrial accidents, dissecting hazard patterns, identifying liability structures most people didn't even know existed. It taught me one thing. People like the enforcer and crimson leave fingerprints everywhere, not physical ones, procedural ones. And today, her fingerprints were bright as neon. A rumble outside pulled me from my thoughts. I stepped onto the porch and saw a scene that confirmed everything I suspected. The clipboard queen had returned, this time with a city utility crew she clearly hadn't expected to see me watching. 3 trucks, 2 supervisors, and 1 bundle of rolled-up survey maps. The tyrant in heels strutted around them, pointing sharply toward my fence line, like she was commanding a platoon. Her voice carried, sharp as broken glass. "You'll mark the encroachment here," she ordered. "This resident has repeatedly violated Section 18.3.1 of our boundary code." Except that code didn't exist. I'd checked. Twice. One of the utility supervisors frowned, flipping through his paperwork. "Ma'am, we're not seeing any record of the HOA filing for a municipal boundary review." "That's because I filed it manually," Claudia snapped. My eyebrows lifted. Filed manually? Municipal boundary reviews could not be filed manually. They required certified digital submission, time-stamped authorization, and departmental verification before a single truck rolled out. Meaning, she'd fabricated the entire request. A violation so severe, it bordered on administrative fraud. And that was before I noticed the second problem. The officer of rules had hand-drawn her own boundary markers on the property map she was waving like a victory flag. The angles were wrong. The scale was wrong. The setback lines were off by almost 6 feet. Any trained eye, including mine, could see it was an amateur sketch passed off as official documentation. My pulse steadied. Discovery wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. A click, a shift. The moment the truth stops hiding, I had what I needed. Without a word, I pulled out my phone and started recording from the porch. Not the crew, just her voice, her statements, her fraudulent map, her false municipal claim. She didn't notice me at first, but one of the workers did, tapping her shoulder. When she turned and saw the camera pointed directly at her, the blood drained from her face. "What do you think you're doing?" she barked. "Documenting," I said evenly. "Since you seem to be creating procedures out of thin air." Her expression flickered, panic, fury, calculation, before hardening again. "You're not authorized to film HOA operations." "City crews aren't HOA operations," I reminded her, "and neither is fraud." The clipboard queen stepped closer, gripping her folder tight enough to crease the edges. "Lower the camera." "You don't give orders to residents," I answered, "especially not when you're misusing city resources." Behind her, one of the utility supervisors whispered to another, their expressions shifting from confusion to annoyance. They sensed it too, the rot in the process. Olivia Trent appeared from between 2 houses, almost as if pulled by gravity toward the chaos. Her face was pale, her steps hesitant. When she saw the scene, the trucks, the fabricated map, Claudia's trembling mask, her eyes widened in horror. She looked at me, then at the enforcer in crimson, then back at me. She knew. She understood exactly what this meant. But fear held her tongue hostage again. Claudia spun on her, desperate. "Treasurer Trent, confirm the boundary review." Olivia froze, shoulders tight, breath shallow. I didn't see the request." That sentence was a dagger, quiet but sharp. Claudia's nostrils flared. "You've seen it. Don't lie." "I'm not lying," Olivia whispered. "I never saw anything." Neighbors were gathering now. Within minutes, 4 more phones were recording. The officer of rules felt control slipping from her grip, sliding, cracking, dissolving under the weight of her own arrogance. "End this circus, Claudia," I said, lowering my phone but keeping it ready. "Before someone higher up sees what you're doing." She stared at me with a hatred, so cold it almost impressed me. "This isn't over," she hissed. She was right. It wasn't. Because what I discovered today wasn't just procedural fraud. It was the foundation of her downfall. And this time, her fingerprints would lead straight to the judge's bench, the the fallout from yesterday's confrontation didn't drift away. It detonated quietly at dawn. I woke to the sound of tires crunching gravel, followed by the unmistakable cadence of someone pacing with purpose. One glance through the window told me everything. Claudia Merriweather wasn't retreating. She was regrouping. The enforcer in crimson stood at the end of my driveway, like she was guarding a geopolitical border, arms crossed, chin high. A folder tucked under her arm, like a weapon she hadn't yet revealed. The sun hadn't even burned off the morning chill, but she carried the heat of someone who'd spent the entire night planning retaliation. She didn't knock. She waited. She wanted an audience. And she got one. I opened the door slowly, keeping my posture neutral. "You're early." Her smile was a thin, brittle curve. "I don't sleep when residents fabricate accusations." Fabricate. The hypocrisy was almost poetic. The city supervisors didn't seem to think anything was fabricated, I reminded her. They left because you couldn't produce a single legitimate document. The clipboard queen's nostrils flared. I withdrew the request. Their presence was no longer required. "Right," I said dryly. "You withdrew the request you never legally filed." For a second, just a second, I saw it. A crack in her composure, a waver in confidence, a tremor of awareness that her empire of manufactured authority was weakening, but the tyrant in heels swallowed it fast, shifting tactics with a predator's instinct. "I'm issuing a formal citation for obstruction," she announced, extending the folder. "Your behavior yesterday violated Section 12.4 of our compliance code." "There is no Section 12.4, I said, unmoving. She stepped closer, too close. "There is when I create it." That single line, that arrogance, was the moment I knew she'd crossed into irreversible self-destruction. Behind her, two neighbors watched from their lawns. They pretended to be stretching, gardening, cleaning cars. But everyone saw the tension. Everyone felt the shift. Even if they didn't yet understand it, I didn't touch the folder. "You can't invent codes," I said calmly. "You can't falsify municipal requests. And you definitely can't weaponize a board position to target individuals." "The officer of rules doesn't need your approval," she snapped. "Does the board know you're rewriting bylaws at sunrise?" I asked. Her jaw tightened, the muscles ticking. She wasn't afraid of me. She wasn't afraid of the neighbors. She was afraid of exposure, real, legal, irreversible exposure. I stepped onto the driveway, reducing the distance between us. "Whatever war you're trying to start, Claudia, you're losing ground." She leaned in until her perfume crowded the air. "You think yesterday mattered? You recorded workers who don't understand HOA authority. You caught me off guard. Congratulations." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "But I always win." It was almost fascinating, watching someone cling so tightly to a fantasy of power while reality tightened like a vice around her wrists. Before I could respond, another voice drifted down the street. "Matthew?" Olivia Trent approached slowly, shoulders drawn tight, eyes flickering between us. She looked more fragile than yesterday, guilt carved into her expression, hands trembling as she clasped a binder to her chest. Claudia spun toward her. "Treasurer Trent, you're late." "I wasn't scheduled to meet you," Olivia murmured. "Yes, you were," the board chair insisted. "We discussed it last night." Olivia froze, not confusion this time, dread. There it was, the visible internal unraveling. She realized the lies weren't strategic. They were escalating, spiraling, mutating into something she could no longer defend. "Claudia," she whispered, voice barely audible, "you didn't call me." It should have been nothing, a tiny correction, but the tyrant in heels reacted like she'd been stabbed. "I did," she snapped. "Don't contradict me in front of residents." Olivia flinched, actually flinched. And that's when the emotional gears locked into place. The witness wasn't loyal to Claudia. She was trapped under her. "Olivia," I said gently, "did you approve the citation she's serving me?" Her throat bobbed. "No." Claudia's glare could have melted steel. "You're mistaken." I'm not," she whispered, shrinking back. "I didn't sign anything." Silence fell. Not peaceful silence, heavy silence. The kind that pulls oxygen from the air. Claudia shoved the folder toward my chest again. "Take it, now." I didn't move. "No." Her voice cracked like a whip. "You will comply." "Or what?" I asked softly. You'll fabricate another municipal order, invent another code, scare another board member into silence? Her eyelid twitched. A tell. A big one. She'd lost control, and she knew it. But the moment that solidified everything wasn't mine. It was Olivia's. She stepped between us. Her voice trembled, but her words didn't. Claudia, stop. 3 seconds of disbelief crossed the enforcer in Crimson's face. Then her fury exploded. This conversation is over, she hissed, spinning on her heels. Enjoy your violation notice. There will be more. She stormed off, heels striking asphalt like sparks. Olivia watched her go, fear and guilt braided tightly across her expression. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't just escalating, it was becoming personal. Too personal. And now, Claudia knew she was cornered. Olivia didn't call first. She didn't text. She didn't even knock. She showed up on my porch just after sunset, standing rigid beneath the porch light like she was bracing for impact. Her hands clutched a slim binder to her chest. Not the HOA-issued kind, not the fake citation folder Claudia Merriweather waved like a sword, but something personal, something that looked like it took every ounce of courage she had to bring. "Can we talk?" she asked, voice small, eyes scanning the yard, as if the board chair might materialize from the shadows. I stepped aside and let her in. She moved tentatively, like someone entering a courtroom instead of a living room. Only when the door clicked shut did she finally breathe. "She's losing control," Olivia whispered. "And if I don't tell someone the truth now, I'm part of it." This was it, the moment Part 7 demanded, the conflicted witness stepping out of fear and into confession. She set the binder on my coffee table and backed away from it like it burned. "I shouldn't have brought it," she muttered, wringing her hands. "She'd destroy me if she knew." "She's already destroying you," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Sit. Tell me what she did." But Olivia couldn't sit. She paced, short, frantic steps, her breath shaking. Her guilt was a storm she had been carrying alone, and it was finally cracking open. "She lied," she started, over and over, to the board, to the city, to the residents. But today, when she told everyone I'd approved that citation, I realized she wasn't just manipulating the rules anymore. She's rewriting them. The enforcer in Crimson had taken her private power trip and turned it into a full-blown crusade, and Olivia, trapped under her authority, had been forced to watch. "She calls herself the officer of rules," Olivia said bitterly. "But she doesn't follow any. She invents them, deletes minutes, alters vote counts, bullies other board members into silence." Her eyes lifted to mine. "And I let it happen." "You were intimidated," I reminded her. "That's not an excuse." Her voice cracked. "Not when it hurt people, not when it hurt your wife." At the mention of my wife, something inside me tightened. The wound was still raw, still throbbing beneath every interaction with the clipboard queen. The memory of that day, the mutilation, the chaos, the screams, was a shadow I carried everywhere. Olivia continued, voice trembling. "There's something you need to know. Something she's hiding. Something about the bylaw amendments she passed last month." I leaned closer, pulse rising. "Go on." She didn't have the authority. Olivia held her own elbows, grounding herself. The vote never passed. She just declared it did. And because she controls the email records, the meeting minutes, and the board's communication portals, no one questioned it. That was it, the opening, the fracture in Claudia's empire. "She used that fake amendment to issue every citation she's thrown at you," Olivia added, "and to justify the surveillance requests, and the property inspections, and the fines she threatened." A silence fell between us, thick, heavy, electric. "You're telling me the entire foundation of her authority is illegal?" I asked. "Yes." Olivia swallowed hard. "And there's more." She opened the binder. Inside weren't documents, no votes, no notes, but codes, dozens of them, remnants of HOA bylaws, typed, scribbled, crossed out, rewritten. Some pages had multiple versions of the same section. Others had marginal notes in Claudia's handwriting. "Push this through next. Residents won't notice. Override dissent." "She's been designing her own rule book," Olivia whispered. "Not for the HOA, for you." My chest tightened. "For me? For your family." Her voice broke. She kept saying you needed to learn your place, that your wife was disrespectful, that she'd make you regret ever challenging her. It took everything inside me not to react. Olivia flinched, seeing the shift in my posture. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have spoken up sooner. You're speaking now, I said. That matters. She nodded weakly. There's something else, something worse. She has a meeting tomorrow with 2 board sympathizers. She's planning to escalate. How? I asked. Olivia hesitated, fear rippling across her features. She wants to turn the entire community against you, petition for forced compliance, and if that doesn't work, she wants a legal injunction. Of course she did. The tyrant in heels wasn't just playing offense, she was preparing a siege. Olivia took a shaky breath. But I can stop her. I have access to the real minutes, the vote logs, the timestamp records. I can expose everything. She finally sat down, shoulders trembling, courage and fear battling on her face. I'll testify, she whispered. Whatever you need, I'll help. It wasn't just a confession. It was the turning point. The moment Claudia's strongest shield became the weapon that would undo her. Olivia hadn't even left my driveway before I'd locked myself in my study and spread everything across the table. The binder, my notes, the fragments of conversations, the timeline of every violation Claudia Merriweather had hurled at us, like darts thrown in a drunken rage. Part 8 demanded strategy, preparation, precision, and now, with Olivia's confession, the entire board structure had a fracture running right through its spine. I stared at the chaotic spread of rewritten bylaws, marginal notes, and Claudia's obsessive handwriting, looping across the pages like a blueprint for dictatorship. The binder wasn't evidence, it was a roadmap to her downfall. The clipboard queen had been rewriting, authority from the inside out. But she'd made the fatal mistake of leaving breadcrumbs in the hands of someone with a backbone, Olivia Trent. I paced the room, the weight of everything tightening around my ribs. My wife's muffled cries from that horrific day echoed in my skull, pulling me back to the moment I swore I would end this. Not with violence, not with retaliation, with truth. And now I had enough truth to bury a kingdom. I powered on my laptop and opened a blank file. This wasn't revenge. This was building a case airtight enough that the enforcer in crimson couldn't wriggle through a single crack. I needed clarity, dates, citations, inconsistencies. And with every line I typed, the bigger picture sharpened. Her illegal amendment, her fabricated votes, her falsified authority. But building a strategy wasn't enough. Not in a neighborhood ruled by fear. I needed allies. I stepped outside into the evening air, the sun bleeding gold behind the cul-de-sac. A few neighbors lingered in their yards, pretending to tidy, pretending not to watch. They'd seen the confrontations. They'd seen Claudia explode. They'd heard the rumors. But fear had forced tongues still. Not anymore. I headed toward the first neighbor who had been present when Claudia tried to corner Olivia earlier. Mr. Harrington, a Vietnam vet with a limp and a spine stronger than any bylaw. He stiffened when he saw me, glancing toward the street like he expected the officer of rules to charge out from behind a hedge. I need a word, I said. He hesitated only a moment before nodding. Inside. His living room smelled of cedar and old books. Once we were alone, he rubbed the back of his neck. I've seen what she's doing. Most of us have. Nothing about it sits right, but nobody wants to be her next target. I understand, I said, but I'm building a case, a legal one, and I need people who witnessed her misconduct to confirm what they saw. Mr. Harrington's eyes hardened. Son, after what she did to your wife, I'll testify any day you name. One ally down, many more to go. I spent the next hour walking house to house. Some doors stayed closed, but others, quietly, cautiously, opened just wide enough for people to whisper their stories. Tales of intimidation, of made-up violations, of threats disguised as warnings. The tyrant in heels had pushed this neighborhood into silent compliance, but fear had a threshold, and she'd crossed it. By the time I returned home, I had a list of willing witnesses. Not everyone was ready to go public yet, but they trusted me enough to document their experiences. It wasn't a full roster, but it was enough to establish a pattern, enough to prove intent, enough to box Claudia into a corner she couldn't escape. Inside, I sat back at the table and began mapping it all out. Her unauthorized amendments, the fake meeting minutes, the sudden fines, the retaliatory inspections, the surveillance. Requests. Every single action tangled into one damning pattern of abuse. But to complete this strategy, I needed one more piece: expert confirmation. I called my old mentor, a retired civil attorney who had prosecuted municipal fraud cases for 3 decades. He picked up after 2 rings. "What trouble have you gotten yourself into now?" he asked, half amused, half wary. "I need your eyes on something," I said. "Something involving a rogue HOA official falsifying authority." His tone shifted. "Email the materials. I'll review tonight." After we hung up, I exhaled, hard. This was it. The turning of the tide. The moment preparation hardened into a real, actionable plan. And then my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Stop gathering people against me. You're making a mistake you can't undo." No name, no signature, but I didn't need one. The heat crawling under my skin told me exactly who sent it. Claudia Merriweather, the board chair, the enforcer in crimson, the tyrant in heels, had realized I wasn't playing defense anymore, and she was starting to panic. Good. Because now I was ready. Now I had the truth. Now I had witnesses. And now she wasn't the only one able to strike first. Morning hit like a warning siren. A thick, uneasy stillness hung over the cul-de-sac, the kind that tells you something has shifted beneath the surface. And it had. By the time sunlight stretched across the lawn, I'd already received 3 more anonymous messages, all veiled threats, all dripping with the same sharp, unmistakable tone of Claudia Merriweather. She knew I was moving, she knew I had allies, and she knew I wasn't backing down. But this part 9, wasn't about reacting to her. It was about executing the preparation phase, taking the skeleton of strategy built in part 8 and giving it muscle, teeth, and a spine she couldn't snap. I grabbed the folder of witness statements, the timeline, Olivia's binder, and my laptop. Today's primary location had to be neutral ground, somewhere outside Claudia's territorial shadow. I drove to the county public workspace, a glass-walled community hub filled with quiet desks, legal resources, and enough people that even the tyrant in heels wouldn't dare storm inside. Maybe. I chose a secluded desk in the far corner, plugging in my laptop as adrenaline hummed in the back of my throat. I had 8 hours to build what needed to be bulletproof, an evidence packet clean enough for the county judiciary to act on without hesitation. I started by sorting everything into categories. 1. Illegal amendments. Olivia's binder gave me more than enough. 2. If fabricated votes, timestamps didn't lie. 3. Manufactured codes, her handwriting all over them. 4. Retaliatory citations, and everyone targeting my household. 5. Witness intimidation. Neighbors' statements were damning. 6. Abuse of authority. Every single interaction with her proved intent. By noon, the enforcer in crimson had texted me again. "You think you're building a case? You're building a grave." She was unraveling, and fear made her sloppy. I archived the text with the others. While I worked, a man in a charcoal suit approached. He scanned the room before sitting gently across from me. My mentor, the retired civil attorney, had arrived earlier than expected. "You weren't exaggerating," he murmured after glancing at the layout on the table. "This isn't misconduct. This is systemic abuse." I nodded once. "Can we win?" "Son, this isn't a fight." He tapped the binder. "This is checkmate." He spent the next hour examining everything, occasionally shaking his head in disbelief. "She's left a trail even an amateur prosecutor could follow. You document it right, and the judge won't just sanction her, she'll be removed." "And the attack on my wife?" My voice dipped lower. "It can be tied back to her escalating behavior?" His gaze sharpened. "Indirectly? Absolutely. Judges take intent very seriously." Exactly what I needed. Exactly what Claudia feared. While he reviewed details, I opened the witness statements I'd collected yesterday. Some were shaky, some were boldly written. Some were anonymous but still useful. Together, they formed a pattern, a clear, undeniable pattern of harassment and targeted retaliation. The clipboard queen hadn't just broken rules, she'd weaponized them. Around 2 p.m., My mentor slid a document toward me. This is your spine, a chronological affidavit draft. Build around it. By the time I'm done polishing it, she'll never hold a position of authority again. It felt like inhaling for the first time in weeks. But the day wasn't done. I still needed physical signatures, confirmations, statements aligned with timestamps and dates. So I left the workspace and drove back into the neighborhood, walking door to door, clipboard in hand, speaking to every resident willing to go on record. Mr. Harrington signed first, then the Johnsons, then 82-year-old Mrs. Dalton, who whispered that Claudia once threatened to fine her for suspicious foot traffic because she had her grandchildren over. Every story added weight to the stack forming in my car. By late afternoon, I had enough signatures to fill a binder of my own, but the turning point came at the end of the street. A minivan door slid open, and Mrs. Patel stepped out. She'd always avoided conflict, terrified of the officer of rules, but today, something in her eyes had changed. "I'll sign," she said softly. "I can't let her ruin another family." The neighborhood wasn't just supporting me. They were waking up, seeing her for what she truly was. By dusk, I'd assembled the full evidence packet, labeled and structured exactly as my mentor instructed. It felt heavy in my hands, but not from its weight, from its power. As I walked toward my house, the sky, dimming into burnt orange, headlights suddenly flared behind me. A silver SUV crawled to a slow, predatory stop. The window rolled down. Red blazer, cold eyes, perfectly painted smirk. Claudia Merriweather, the tyrant in heels herself. "You're making enemies," she said sweetly. "Dangerous ones." I held the binder to my chest. "No, I'm making a case." Her smile thinned, and for the first time since this all began, she looked scared. Good. Tomorrow, she'd look defeated. Claudia Merriweather didn't linger long in that SUV. She gave me one final venomous smile, rolled the window up, and drove off into the twilight like a storm cloud retreating to gather lightning. But the message she left behind settled in my bones. This wasn't intimidation anymore. This was desperation. The enforcer in crimson had finally realized her grip on the neighborhood was slipping through her manicured fingers. Part 10 needed implementation. No more planning, no more preparation. Today was the pivot point. The moment strategy stepped out of theory and into action. I woke before sunrise, adrenaline already pulsing beneath my skin. The house was quiet. My wife was asleep in the next room, bandaged, fragile, but fighting. Just seeing her chest rise and fall steady reminded me why I couldn't afford hesitation now. This wasn't just justice, it was survival. I grabbed the evidence packet, triple-checked the tabs, witness statements, timestamps, Olivia's binder scans, the fabricated bylaw amendments, the anonymous threats Claudia sent, everything, and slid it into a reinforced case. The tyrant in heels wasn't dealing with a resident she could bully anymore. She was dealing with someone who had outgrown her entire playbook. I drove straight to the county courthouse annex, where filings were processed. The morning air was crisp, pulsing with a sense of shift, like the world was waiting to exhale. Inside the building, fluorescent lights flickered awake as clerks shuffled behind windows. My mentor met me at the entrance, crisp suit, steely eyes, holding a thermos like it was a tool of war. "You ready?" he asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Good," he said, "because once we file this, there's no undoing it." We stepped toward the filing desk, but before we could reach the counter, a familiar staccato click of heels snapped through the corridor. I didn't even have to turn. I felt the temperature drop. Claudia Merriweather, wearing power lipstick and a blazer redder than a warning flare. She shouldn't have been here this early. She shouldn't have known where I was going. But the officer of rules always had a way of slithering into the one place she wasn't invited. She approached slowly, savoring the entrance like a predator stalking prey. "Good morning," she cooed, too sweet to be sincere. "Filing something, or just pretending you have a case?" My mentor stepped forward, placing himself subtly between us. "Ms. Merriweather, this is a legal space. You should be careful what you interrupt." Her smile sharpened. "I'm not interrupting. I'm observing." She tilted her head, eyes glinting with the last ashes of arrogance she had left. "It's amusing watching you both think paperwork can stop power." I held her gaze. "It's not paperwork, Claudia. It's evidence." Her jaw twitched, once sharp. Evidence fabricated by frightened residents and a turncoat treasurer? Pathetic. But the clipboard queen's voice didn't carry confidence anymore. It carried cracks. My mentor lowered his voice just enough that she leaned in. If you keep talking, you may incriminate yourself further. Her eyes flickered. A tell. She knew it. She knew we weren't bluffing. She knew we weren't alone in this. What you're doing is harassment, she hissed, stepping closer. Targeting the board. Targeting me. You're violating... Don't say it, I warned quietly. Don't invent another rule in a courthouse. She paused. Her throat tightened. She realized it too late. 2 court officers turned their attention toward us. Her power was evaporating. I turned to the clerk and slid the evidence packet onto the counter. I need this filed for immediate review. Multiple residents, multiple violations, including falsified authority and retaliatory conduct. The clerk's eyes widened as he lifted the binder's weight. This is substantial. It's enough for preliminary injunction? My mentor asked. More than enough, the clerk said. A soft choke noise slipped from Claudia's throat. The clipboard queen stepped back like she'd been hit, not physically but structurally, like someone had just kicked out the last pillar holding her empire upright. This isn't over, she whispered. For you, I replied, it is. She spun on her heel and stormed down the corridor, heels striking tile like gunshots. But even in that furious stride, I noticed something new. A tremor, fear, real breathless fear. My mentor exhaled. She's going to unravel. Quickly, be ready. Oh, I am, I said, because she's not the one holding the reins anymore. Outside the annex, the sky had brightened. A clean, piercing blue washed overhead, like the world itself had shifted shades. And as I gripped the stamped filing receipt, I knew. Claudia Merriweather wasn't just losing control. She was about to face consequences she never imagined. Tomorrow, the entire neighborhood would see her fall. The community hall had never been this full. Cars lined both sides of the street. Doors slammed, voices murmured. Tension pulsed through the humid evening air like static before lightning. It wasn't just a meeting tonight. It was a reckoning. Every resident who had been silenced, intimidated, fined, threatened, embarrassed, or bullied by Claudia. Merriweather was here now, filling row after row of metal chairs. Some stood in the back, arms crossed, waiting, watching. A storm of justice ready to break. The enforcer in crimson stood at the front of the room, gripping her clipboard like a shield. Her confidence, once towering, looked brittle, held together only by habit and desperation. But she still tried to command the space, clearing her throat sharply into the microphone. Quiet, everyone. This is an unscheduled emergency meeting called by the board chair. She lifted her chin, refusing to look shaken. We have serious concerns regarding one resident's attempts to undermine community order. A ripple of anger moved through the room. She felt it. Her fingers tightened around the mic. I stepped into the hall with my mentor beside me, Olivia on my left, and 3 neighbors behind us. Every head turned. Conversations halted. The sudden silence hit like a dropped weight. Claudia's eyes found me immediately. Fear flicked across her face, so fast most people wouldn't catch it. But I'd learned her expressions too well by now. The tyrant in heels was cornered, and she knew it. Mr. Lawson, she said, voice icy brittle, you are not recognized. Please take a seat while the board addresses your misconduct. My mentor chuckled under his breath. Olivia looked like she might faint, but I stepped forward anyway, holding the official filing stamp in my left hand, the one thing she never thought I'd get. I won't be sitting, I said calmly. Not tonight. Gasps, whispers. Someone muttered, It's about time. Claudia forced a laugh. You think you can hijack a board meeting? You hijacked this entire neighborhood, I replied. I'm just bringing the receipts. I handed the packet to Olivia, letting the entire room see her take it willingly. Claudia's jaw unhinged. No, she hissed. You don't understand what you're doing. I think she does, Mr. Harrington boomed from the back. We all do. Residents nodded, some clapped, others stood. The officer of rules faltered. Olivia stepped to the mic, hands trembling, but voice clear. For the record, I'm the HOA treasurer, and I need to state publicly that the board chair has falsified minutes, fabricated votes, and unilaterally passed amendments that were never approved. The room erupted, gasps, outrage, muttering. Claudia lunged for the mic, but 3 residents instinctively stepped between them. "Move," she demanded. "No," Olivia whispered. "Not anymore." My mentor approached the center aisle, raising his voice so the entire hall could hear. "All of you need to understand something important. What Ms. Merriweather has done isn't just improper, it's illegal. As of this morning, a petition for injunction and board removal is filed with the county judiciary. With enough witness statements," he gestured to the crowd, "the judge will act quickly." Claudia froze. She went utterly still, like a predator realizing the forest had turned against her. "You can't do this to me," she breathed. "You did this to yourself," I answered. Residents began speaking up, one after another, voices rising. "She fined me for having guests. She threatened my kids with a violation. She told me I'd be dealt with if I didn't trim my roses. She tried to inspect my shed without permission. She made me cry in my own driveway." Every accusation hit her like a stone. She backed up step by step. This is a mob," she whispered. "No," I said softly. "This is accountability." Then something snapped inside her, rage or panic or both. She grabbed the microphone again, slamming her clipboard onto the table. "You're all pathetic," she screamed. "You need rules. You need order. You need me." The entire room went silent. Everyone saw it now. Not authority, not leadership. Delusion. My mentor nodded at the clerk who'd joined us, holding a sealed envelope. "Effective immediately," he announced. "Ms. Merriweather is suspended pending judicial review. She is ordered to cease all HOA activities until her hearing." The tyrant in heels stared at him like she didn't understand English. "Suspended? You can't suspend me. I am the board." "No," Olivia said softly but firmly. "Not anymore." Security approached her cautiously. She took one step back, then another, until her heel caught the edge of the stage and she stumbled. For the first time, for the only time. Claudia Merriweather looked small. She looked beaten. She looked exactly how every resident she'd tormented had felt for years. As the officers escorted her out, she turned her head just enough for our eyes to lock. Hatred, panic, shock, all swirling at once. "This isn't over," she mouthed. But the doors closed behind her, and the room exhaled. Together. People applauded, others hugged, some cried. Olivia collapsed into a chair, shaking from adrenaline and relief. Tonight, the neighborhood saw the fall of the woman who weaponized power, and the rise of a community finally reclaiming its voice. Tomorrow would be the judge's decision. But for the first time in a long time, victory felt inevitable. The courthouse felt colder than usual that morning. Sterile marble floors, distant echoes of footsteps, the low hum of people waiting for justice. But beneath all of that lived a charged stillness, like the entire building understood what was about to happen. Today wasn't just a hearing. It was the final unraveling of Claudia Merriweather, the woman who had terrorized an entire neighborhood under the illusion of authority. My wife held my arm as we entered, moving slowly but determined. Her bandages were lighter now, but the memory of what happened to her still clawed tight around my ribs. Seeing her walk into this courtroom, facing the woman who mutilated her with nothing but rules, rage, and a blowtorch, reignited every ounce of resolve inside me. Residents filled the benches, each one present not out of curiosity, but out of solidarity. Mr. Harrington sat near the front, posture straight. Mrs. Dalton clutched her purse tightly. Olivia Trent sat beside my mentor, trembling but resolute. This wasn't just my case anymore. It belonged to everyone she had hurt. And then the doors opened. Claudia Merriweather walked in with the stiffness of someone bracing for impact. The enforcer in crimson wasn't wearing her signature blazer today. Court required neutrality. But even in muted colors, she radiated defiance. Her eyes swept the room, expecting fear. But instead, she found steel. No one shrank back. No one avoided her gaze. The clipboard queen faltered. For the first time, she understood she wasn't feared here. She was judged. The bailiff called the courtroom to order, and the judge entered. A tall, sharp-eyed woman, known for cutting through lies like a scalpel. "Case number 243187, the clerk announced. County versus Claudia Merriweather, regarding allegations of falsified authority, fabricated citations, retaliation, coercion of board members, and community harm. Claudia lifted her chin. I contest every accusation. Her voice cracked. The judge nodded once. We'll begin with witness testimony. My mentor stood, calm and composed. Your Honor, our first witness is Ms. Olivia Trent. Olivia rose slowly, but the moment she reached the stand, a quiet ripple of encouragement moved through the room. She clutched the edge of the podium, took a breath, and spoke loud enough for everyone, even the tyrant in heels, to hear. Claudia Merriweather falsified voting records. She rewrote amendments without board approval. She intimidated members into silence, and she targeted the Lawson family with fabricated violations because she believed they questioned her authority. Claudia's head snapped toward Olivia. Lies. You're doing this because he manipulated you. But the judge raised a hand. Ms. Merriweather, you will remain silent unless addressed. The officer of rules sat back, cheeks flushing with fury. One by one, witnesses stepped forward. Mr. Harrington testified about threats. Mrs. Dalton described coerced fines. Neighbors recounted fabricated citations. Several admitted they'd been afraid to speak until now. Every voice built a wall around the truth, brick by brick, until the narrative Claudia tried to manipulate shattered into dust. Finally, the judge looked to me. Mr. Lawson, do you wish to speak? Yes, Your Honor. When I approached the stand, I didn't focus on the room. I focused on my wife, her injuries, her fear, the way she'd flinched every time the officer of rules appeared at our door. Claudia didn't just misuse her authority, I said. She weaponized it. She twisted bylaws into tools of punishment. She harassed my family. She retaliated against anyone who questioned her. And when my wife challenged her behavior, I swallowed the lump in my throat. She became violent. Claudia shot to her feet. I never laid a hand on her. Sit, the judge commanded. The tyrant in heels sat. My mentor approached the court clerk and submitted the final binder. Every timestamp, every fabricated code, every falsified amendment, every threatening text. The judge spent several minutes reviewing key pages. The entire room held its breath. When she finally spoke, her voice cut through the silence like a blade. Ms. Merriweather, your actions constitute extreme abuse of authority, fraud, coercion, and endangerment. The evidence is overwhelming. This court hereby orders your permanent removal from the HOA board, prohibits you from holding any community authority role for life, and refers all violent conduct allegations to criminal court for prosecution. A gasp swept across the room. Claudia surged to her feet. You can't do this to me. I am this community. No, the judge said calmly. You harmed it. Two deputies moved forward. The enforcer in crimson backed away, eyes wide, not with rage this time, but with pure, disbelieving terror. When they took her by the arms, she didn't fight. She crumbled. As they escorted her out, she threw one last look over her shoulder, broken, defeated, small. And then she was gone. The judge adjourned the hearing, but no one stood right away. It felt like the air itself needed a moment to catch up. My wife slipped her hand into mine. It's over, she whispered. For us, I said softly, and for everyone she hurt. Residents approached, thanking Olivia, thanking my mentor, thanking each other. A neighborhood united not by fear anymore, but by triumph. As we stepped outside, sunlight washed over the courthouse steps. The world felt lighter. The horizon felt wider. Justice wasn't just served, it was reclaimed. And now, if you want more powerful stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, reclaiming their lives, and fighting back with truth and courage, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from.